Is it on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I just pretend that's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did the media influence you as a model?
I think it definitely influenced a certain look that they were going for. It influenced pressure on how much weight you gained, what clothes you wore, even kind of like whom you associated with and what contracts you took for certain companies.
Did you ever feel like they went too far?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there were certain guidelines for weight that they wanted to make sure you fit into a certain size. You couldn't have too much muscle tone, but they didn't want you to look too flabby either, so there was that. They were definitely going for a certain look for certain things. So,
Have you heard of the model Philippa Hamilton, who was recently fired by Ralph Lauren for being 5'10", 120 pounds, and quote overweight?
I did, yes, and that made me sick. So, yes.
Yeah.
I like the opposite stance where they're during Fashion Week in Spain, where the models were too thin and they wouldn't let them work because they were too thin.
Wow.
So that was a couple seasons ago.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So now, as you've become older and you have a young son, how do you think the media overall in general has affected your life, the way you view the media in the world, and especially the way your young son views the world?
I think it's scary because I think that this media is putting forth certain images, like this is what it's like if you're cool, or which sounds like really cliche, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you are grown up or you want to be associated with a certain group, you know, or a certain thing, then you should like all of these things. You should watch these TV shows, you wear these clothes, your hair's cut in this way. Like even, I had a fight with him about his haircut because he was afraid that if his hair was too short, he wanted to look like a skater kid, and he was afraid if his hair was too short that he wouldn't fit into that. So based on what he saw on TV.
Definitely. And how do you think that the way the media portrays different races and different ethnicities, do you think that has influenced him?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I think that's where a lot of stereotypes come from, and people who don't interact with other people.
Definitely. Did you want to say something?
No.
I can edit all this so we can like talk and like
Yeah.
ask, like, so I can edit.
There were people
Okay.
outside. There were just people outside, and then I had to say something, but I was like,
Ew, watch it, watch it.
Lots of editing.
And what do you primarily see when you look at the news? When the news comes on at night or in the morning, what do you primarily see?
I've been really surprised recently because I was a journalism major. I've been surprised at how much news is now dedicated to celebrities because, you know, you'll watch like Channel 6 News, which you would think would only be like local news or politics or things going on in the economy. And now all of a sudden it's like John and Kate. Like I'll be watching, you know, the 6 o'clock news and it's, why do I care about, like that's not news,
That's
you know?
not important. That's not relevant to us.
Exactly. So I definitely see even more of a crossover with that.
Definitely.
Sorry.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Can we think of anything else that we need to ask or we want to?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah.
I think that because today in the news, violence is overwhelming. The violence sells on the news besides celebrities. And do you think that they should downsize or downplay the coverage that they use?
Like on murder primarily. Then like
Should I look over here?
Yeah.
that question
so weird.
Rephrase that question.
Okay, so as violence becomes increasingly more prominent, and it's right up there with celebrities and John and Kate and everything that's going on in Hollywood. What was the question?
Well, because violence sells,
Be-
should it be
yeah.
downplayed?
Do you think that it's
And we should focus on
too
more like
overpowering.
political
Do you think
Yeah, I
news
can't
and
edit
more
off everyone always talking
important.
down.
Vermont Forum, if you're in the building, please call 1200.
Do you think it's overexposed, or do you think it's fine the way it is, or should it be downplayed, or what?
I think it's definitely overexposed, and I think that there's this very interesting book called Culture of Fear, which is one of the reasons I got out of journalism, because it talks about, you know, these news they're business, basically. They want the most readers or the most viewers or whatnot, so they're going to put on their program what sells. So people want to read about violence and murder and all of that. So they'll perpetuate that. And they will also try to, like this H1N1 nonsense swine flu. They'll take a little story like that, which is, the swine flu's bad, but they'll blow it up because they want people to be afraid. So because if they're afraid, they're going to be reading about it. They're going to want to watch the news. Like when the whole Columbine thing happened. And that was like, the day that it happened, it was 24/7 media coverage on it. When we didn't need all that. You know, they could have waited till after they found out all the information and then reported it. So, and that's where you get misinformation, you get people being scared, and they're doing it because they want people, you know, what's the news going to say today about it?
Definitely. So if you said that the media thrives off of the people's opinion of fear and their fear of what's going on in America, from Columbine to everything else that's going on. So how come you don't see this much coverage on about fear in other countries such as Canada? Like Canadian news doesn't cover nearly as much violent crimes as the United States does.
It's because it's not part of their culture. Like, I think it's a cultural thing here. I think that we've perpetuated it and people want to be afraid, and that our government uses that to keep people afraid. They want newspapers to run these stories because if we can all be afraid of the streets, or we can be afraid of, you know, viruses, then the government can kind of do what they want. And people aren't going to question them because we're so busy worried about, are our streets safe? Is our town safe? So I think that people in other countries, they don't have that. They're not inundated with that. Maybe, I guess maybe the news isn't as much like a business there.
Yeah.
But it is a business here.
Definitely. Thank you very
Wait,
much.
can I, one more thing to cover.
Yes.
Can you ask her about, does the news media also, with celebrities, do you think they dive too much into their personal lives, like, such as Britney Spears and like Lindsay Lohan and like stuff like that? Do you think that they dive too much, go into too much of their personal lives and not too much of what, like, they're famous for? And
Absolutely.
they have a strong, like, pressure to be a role model, and if they slip up one little bit, then, like, they have that to live with for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Turn that into a question.
Okay. So do you think the media oversteps their boundaries with celebrities in regards to looking too much into their personal lives rather than looking at their talent and looking at their trade almost?
I think so, especially because if you look at the news media, like back when Marilyn Monroe was popular, you know, it comes out now that she was having this big, you know, scandalous affair with JFK, and the reporters would have known it at the time. They knew all about it, but they didn't report it. So, and a lot of celebrities who were gay, they knew that they were gay, but because it wasn't accepted, they wouldn't report that. So now we've come into this kind of sensationalized media, and again, it's because it sells. If people wouldn't buy it, they wouldn't print it. So it's kind of like this monster where, like, yes, they're churning out all this stuff, but people are buying it. So because they're buying it, they're going to keep churning it out. So
Right.
whereas if people would stop and kind of say, we're not going to buy this or we're not going to watch it, then they would have to cut back some way. But it's kind of like,
Right.
you know, are we buying it because they're selling it, or are they selling it because we're buying it?
Right.
If that makes sense. So.
Definitely. Can you guys think
you.
of
That
anything?
is an amazing, because that's gonna, I like, in my head, I'm brainstorming. Thank you. Thank you.